Howdy ho, friends and foes, and welcome to Dad's on Life, your weekly episodic show about parenting from a male perspective. I'm your host, Jay Miles, and with me, as always, are my co-hosts, Keith Bogan.
Howdy ho.
Doug Hammerdike.
Present.
Chad Holloway.
Hola.
And Vince Quartararo.
How you doing?
Today we're going to be talking about communications and such. But before we get to that, I think if we didn't address the elephant in the room, it would be inexcusable. The elephant in the room. As we all know, the capital, Washington, D.C., went under siege this week. There, of course, are different viewpoints as to who it was. But the Capitol building itself was stormed by what have largely been identified and, in some cases, arrested as Trump supporters. Now, a blanket statement. I 100% condone, 100% back Americans' right to protest. I have no problem with protesting in any way. Trump supporter, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, whatever. Where I have my problem is when things like looting, destruction of government or business, government property or business, putting other Americans' lives in danger, and in this case, the death of 5 Americans, one of which was a Capitol Police officer named Brian Sick, who was a resident of Middlesex County, went to Middlesex County Votech, was born and raised in South River. First of all, from all of us here at Dad's on Life, we send our condolences to the families and loved ones of the deceased. On a couple of groups in Old Bridge, there was a post about Officer Sicknick, and it actually had to be stopped. They had to turn off comments for it. They didn't pull the post, but the comments were apparently the confrontations continued on the situation of whatever happened. As I said, I'd like to take the moment to condemn, once they reach that point of injuring people, destruction of property, killing people. I don't care if you're Black Lives Matter, Antifa, Trump supporter, QAnon supporter, conspiracy theorist, or whatever. Once you go past that stage of protest and go into violence and destruction, you've crossed a line you cannot come back from. I hope that everyone involved who's been arrested is prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and if they did wrong, are found guilty and serve the time for the crime they did. Again, condolences to the family and friends and loved ones of Officer Brian Sicknick, Ashley Babbitt, Roseanne Boyland, and anyone else who killed the other day. Anybody have anything they'd like to add about that before we move on?
I'll just go on record as saying that I'm not necessarily as quick as you are to send condolences to the families of terrorists, but otherwise, well said.
Yeah, I mean, it happened, and it was interesting that surprisingly, my kids were not aware of it until they got home. Yeah, we were talking about it, and I was surprised that well, I mean, they were at school and stuff, and, I just didn't think me and Heather were sitting there, with shock and awe, and the kids come home and and talking to them, and I just assumed that somebody at school would have said something, or classmates or something, but no. So it was interesting, and we had to explain the whole thing, and I thought that they were more up on like what was going, well, how things have been transpiring just from the way we talk and stuff, and the news that we listen to it in the home and stuff. But no, it was interesting, time to like sit down and explain the whole situation and how we got here, and and the idea of misinformation and how it could lead people down a certain path, and it, and just like, well, how could we have avoided this? And we went through a couple different scenarios, explaining that, the reality is what actually is transpiring at this moment. But we went over a couple different things, that how, if this or that was followed up, or people were assured or whatever, then maybe we wouldn't have reached this point. But and some people believe that it was inevitable, that regardless, it was something like this was bound to happen. And and we talked about how, some of the different security issues and all that, you know that not necessarily allowed this to happen, but is part of the cause of how it did happen. So
Well, there is some belief that there was mishandling amongst the Capitol Police, with belief with belief that this was going to escalate to a similar point that it did, and they clearly underreacted, maybe would be a good way to put it. It's an understatement, I understand that, but reacted poorly to the siege, let's say. Down to there were some reports of them letting the protesters in. There was one instance where a Capitol Police officer was seen taking a selfie with one of the protesters. On the end of the video that was seen here, clearly the Capitol Police officer has his phone in his hand, and he is with one of the protesters. So there are many subtle levels. Also, the officer involved in the shooting of Ashley Babbitt has been put on leave for his actions.
okay. Yeah, well, like I was saying, yeah, I mean, it's important to keep our kids up to date, and to discuss these things, and glad we did. And hopefully it'd be a sad thing to remember, but it's also important that they do remember these things, and it's part of history and a part of their life, you know, growing up. I mean, my parents weren't political people, I mean, at all. And there's like so many things that, have happened that I would say that I was, I almost said immune, but not immune, but just you never realized and skipped over that that I actually lived through. So,
Right.
but
It's
so
it's at points it's the not in my backyard theory. So
yeah. So that's all.
I think some of this stuff is, over time, what we've seen is people have gone from committing bad acts by themselves as individuals, going into a movie theater, going into a school, those kinds of things. So now it's becoming groups who are doing this. So it's
yes,
kind of the next evolution in violence within our society. And it's, it's a sad commentary on where we are, but does it surprise me? No. I mean, I think we've seen bad actors, especially recently, much more, and I'm with you. I agree 100%. If people want to protest. And I value everybody's opinion. I don't care what that opinion is. And in fact, I would probably fight strongest for somebody I disagreed with to have their opinion than I would for people in the majority, right?
Mhm.
Because it's important that everybody be heard. But to your point also, as soon as it breaks down into violence and property destruction, that's where it ends. I don't care who they are.
I'll tell you, in this house, there's a lot of anger. Not between us. We're all in agreement here. The boys may be a bit more angry than I am because they're probably paying more attention. They're probably more, they've studied it even closer. And there's a full expectation on a very negative side that the crimes that were committed that were fully documented on video and audio, which had they been committed by anyone of color would have resulted in prison sentences of 25 years to life, will be met with nothing more than probation and a
oh, I
gentle.
don't know about that.
We have full expectation of that, and that is what will lead to civil war, because now it's finally in the greatest national spotlight. And when they fail to punish these people the way they should, by the way, up to and including potential early pardons from the current president, there will be hell to pay, and there will be lots of bloodshed. By the way, P.S. Next week's show is going to be a shit show also, because what'll not 2 weeks from now, because what'll happen on January 20th will make what happened in the Capitol look like a day at the park.
I don't know about that either.
I'm very concerned. I think there's going to be massive demonstrations and massive violence that day.
Well, no doubt about it. Wednesday was a dark day for the whole country. All right. I've heard a lot of people saying, well, if everybody was black or color, and I heard people calling all of them terrorists. I've heard people, everybody on a number of different sides. Leading up to Wednesday, though, I also know that there was more than just Trump supporters. There were groups calling for counter rallies, for insurrections. So make no doubt about it. You go enough into the deep web, everybody on both sides are calling arms. All right. And ultimately, though, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who broke in, who sieged it. All right, because we're continuing to drive a divide instead of trying to acknowledge that 5 people were killed, how many wounded, all this other stuff. We keep driving a divide by saying, oh, well, if it was the other side, they would get the death penalty, but since it's them, they're going to get a slap on the wrist. Well, first off, we don't know. It's speculation. Only time will tell how the process of law and everything there. But also, by continuing to argue, to continuing to call names, to continuing to put labels on everybody, continuing to I've seen so many people saying, good that the lady got shot and killed. By continuing to not even acknowledge that there was human death, and the utter turmoil throughout the whole country, we're not gonna be able to change the penal code. We're not gonna be able to change the corruption from local state to higher state. We're not gonna be able to change anything if all we keep doing is fighting like we're in feudal Europe, you know, where, oh, I follow this guy, so he says jump, I jump. I follow that guy, he says jump, I jump. But it's almost one of those where I'm starting to realize where the common enemy and the common ally is it should be America, because on the one hand we're totally dividing ourselves and we're not getting anything done. We're not making any progress on changing things because we keep going to extremes and we keep just labeling people to the point where even if you're talking to somebody who might have a rational idea who wants to help you, the second you realize that they have a bumper sticker on their car, you shut off communication. What is that? So, no, Wednesday was a dark day, but really, I think it really shows that America has met her boiling point, and especially with the responses after what actually happened, where so few are even acknowledging the fact that human life was killed, whether by heart attack or by gunshot or by whatever. All right, everybody still wants to have this divide of like, oh, good, and or no, bad, or some people want more, and like people who want more, no, all right, civil war should not even be an option. But right. Quit with the name calling, the labeling, and everything, because quite frankly, all of America right now needs change. 2020 of all the years should have showed us that. But instead of us coming together and actually like, yeah, wow, dude, yeah, we can't go that route. We got to actually get together and communicate. We got to start somewhere. Otherwise, we're going to go even further. And we're going to just keep pushing labels. We're going to keep not talking, going to further extremes. And yeah, where that goes, it's going to be a lot darker than what happened to our country on Wednesday. It should be a place that no American wants to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just afraid of that. And, me and my wife were discussing some of that too with our sister-in-law and all. And that, everybody's just so polarized. And now even if Biden does great things, people on the other side are just going to be like, at the moment, just waiting for him to get in to pounce on him and point out everything that's done wrong. And it's just tough because the extreme voices are the ones that everybody is hearing and everybody is frustrated with, whatever side it is. It's the extremes, and I don't think that like the Trump people out there are necessarily the core of Americans or the core of conservatism. And as well as when you see some of these other things going on, I don't think that's really America. And I mean, I think that really we do all feel the same way about hatred and all, and in the core of things that life and all. But I think that the social media and and television and like we said, bad preachers out there are the ones that have the loudest voices and are really pushing, either you want to call it divide, a narrative, whatever you want to call it, is plating things as a certain way, and that's where people are shaping their own like opinions across this whole country. And I think it's going to be a rough, at least 4 years. I mean, I hope it's not. I pray it's not. We pray as a family that it's not. But I think that, like I said, that the people on the other end now, now that Biden will take his place, in a couple weeks, that people are just waiting for that moment to just like come back and like, and just like point out everything wrong, even if something good is coming out of it or he's doing things right, they'll find a way to twist it.
Right.
So.
Well, the other thing I see that's pretty prevalent in this is there's a double standard based on what behavior is being based on political party, based on the behaviors that are being enacted, based on behaviors of people. And so people, in my opinion, should be as pissed off about people burning, crashing businesses under Black Lives Matter as they are people breaking into the Capitol. But whenever you say, oh, no, that was different because there's a reason for that, that's where there's a huge problem. Because when I look at this, I go, none of that's right. This is all wrong that people are doing this stuff. And they shouldn't do that. The other thing is trying to unify the country. You know, what we see when we look at politics, all this is politics, right? It's just how things are done. But what we have is we've got Biden at this point, and everybody else does it too. It's not, I'm not saying anything about Biden, but I'm saying that a way to improve this would be to look at people who not only are Democrats, but who are also Republicans who could fill positions for him. Because if you want to unify, because immediately he's discounting 50% of the people, right? Because he's only looking at the Democrats when he's trying to unify the country. And I get that that's how the politics work, is that they appoint people by party, right? And by who supported them. And there's a whole list of things that they would make these decisions by, and I use the example of one of my local congressmen who has co-sponsored several bills. He's a Republican, but he has co-sponsored several bills with Democrats. I'm like, that's one of the reasons why I supported him. I did some volunteer work for him. And that I think is a great thing is like, you have to reach across the aisle, and until they start reaching across the aisle, and it doesn't have to be everybody, right? I mean, I understand people are and on everything, but people need to find some sort of common ground, because I don't care who the people are. There's a common ground of some sort that can be found. And I think that's really what we need if we want to unify the country or make things better anyway. People have got to come together, and it's this cross-party cooperation that needs to start.
So I think that's a pretty. I think we should pretty much leave this here, and get on to move on to the topic at hand. Vince, you came up with the idea. It probably would be conducive for you to introduce it. The floor is yours, Vince, if you're here.
All right. So today, what we want to touch base on is communication. How we're teaching our kids to properly communicate, on a day-to-day basis, but also being aware of how their body language, their looks, their facial expressions, their hand movements, pretty much how everything that you're doing is talking. It's not just the words out of your mouth. It's your gestures, your whole appearance, your persona, the way you carry yourself, how that brings your words either stronger, weaker, or somewhere in between to the people you're talking to. And then as our children grow older, teaching them and seeing how they learn, where if you're with friends and family, you may speak this way or act this way, and that's okay. It's still it's polite, it's casual. But then as they grow older and they get into the business, into workplaces, where there's a little bit of a different type of etiquette, and then building upon that. So communication, not just words. There you go.
It just brought to my mind my mom. I remember, roll your eyes again at me, kid, and I'll knock him out of your head.
We all heard that.
Next Tuesday.
That's a great example. Great example.
Yeah, we've all heard that one. Even Keith, I think, has probably heard that one.
Yeah, I'm a big eye roller. But also from my mom, at the dinner table and all, we learned to sit up straight. That was like one of those big pet peeves of my mom, is you sit up straight in that chair, not hunched over. It should be like all like, do the hunched over thing. Like, how does that look? So it's surprisingly, one of my things with my kids was also to sit up straight in your chair and stop putting your feet on the chair. You sit on them, because they want to do like Indian style or something. Like, Where is that acceptable? Nowhere. You don't sit like that. You sit with your feet on the floor, you're back to the chair.
There's an old bit by, I believe it's this is from Cosby actually, where he goes, yeah, my mother used to say she's sick and tired, and then one day she just said, I'm just sick, and then he goes, and tired. He goes, I woke up about a month later. Yeah, so yeah, I'm sure we've all been through that too. There's a lot of, there's many subtle levels in this discussion. For me, I mean, it's been interesting to watch, especially Delana over the last few months, as she's started to come into her own, and is almost at 9, almost 10, is a almost a teenager, is almost a teenager trapped in a 10-year-old's body. So she has become very aware of herself, and she's very confident in a lot of what she does, and she's slowly started to figure out that idea of communication is everything you do. Every move you make is a form of communication.
Yeah, one of the things I taught Frankie when he was younger, some of it's pretty basic. If somebody comes into the room, or if you're meeting somebody, look them in the eye.
Right.
Talk directly to them, open your mouth, speak up to them, extend your hand first, be proactive in this stuff. And he gets all that stuff, although I think that's becoming, in his generation or in this area maybe, or in the area in the States, it's becoming kind of a lost thing. Like I see fewer people, fewer youth engaging in those kinds of behaviors, but try to teach them. And I remember, other things that I've done is I've tried to teach them like how to eat properly, right? So when you go out to a nice restaurant, I remember and one of the things that kind of shaped me was growing up, my mom always taught me how to do things, but we didn't have very much money, right? So we didn't go out to the nice places. So once I kind of started in my career early on, I was out with a bunch of executives, and my boss, who was kind of a high-powered guy at the time, was sitting next to me, and I had used his bread plate because I was confused about the plates, right? And so I was like, and to this day, I'm kind of embarrassed about that. I mean, he didn't make a big deal out of it or whatever, but I was embarrassed because it made an impact on him about who I was and what kind of things I know. It's like I always talk about like eating properly, using the right utensils, and how that communicates about who you are as well. So, we'll talk about it at home, but then once they hit about 13, 14, I remember taking them to a super nice restaurant, and just, you got 2 or 3 people hovering around the table. And I'm like, okay. And we would talk through the things, bread and drink and, those kinds of things. Like, of course, the thing I use now is bread. And if you put your fingers down and okay, the B is for your bread plate, the D is for your drink. So that's how I taught Frankie, like, which ones, this is your drink on the right, the bread plate's on the left. You start with your silverware on the outside, you put them together when you're finished, you cross them if you're not, all this kind of stuff.
Hey Chad, can we have a session after this call so you can teach me all those things?
Coffee cups, wine, which appropriate wine glasses, those kinds of things. But the other thing I tried to teach him was how one looks and how one presents themselves. So I said, try it sometime. I said, go out, have your hair all messy, put on just kind of a ripped up shirt, put on some torn up jeans, and see how people perceive you. Then go home and put on a suit and walk out and see how people react to you and look at the difference. And I remember one time I used to work in the hospital. We were all suited up, right? So I was coming home. It's probably 1 or 2 in the morning, and there was an accident. probably a 4 or 5 car accident and multiple places on this bridge where they cross the Mississippi. And I'm just like driving along, and I stop and I get out. You know, the cars are trying to stop, but I had just got there as soon as it had happened. And I said, what happened? And like all of a sudden, everybody starts coming up to me and like pleading their case. And I was like, they're like, oh, well, this guy did this and this guy, and then this went over here, and then some other guy would come up and be like, yeah, but this guy did this. And I was like, whoa, is everybody okay? I'm like, but they thought I was like somebody like
an ambulance chaser
because I show up in the suit, right? I guess I don't know. I look like an authority figure.
They either thought you were an ambulance chaser or a sergeant or something, or a lieutenant.
I mean, right away, then I'm like, they think I'm a person in authority. I'm like, I just want to know, are the people okay? Is there anything we can do? Is there any first aid we can administer? Those kinds of things, right?
Right.
So, you know, I've seen those kinds of things. And my last story before I hand off the baton here is that, you know, I went to school with an African-American gentleman down at the University of Miami, and he wore suits every day. And wearing a suit in Miami can be very uncomfortable. But he also did his undergrad at Howard University, and he said his mentor there told him, he says you have to be concerned about how you're going to be perceived. And if you wear your gym clothes into the grocery store, they're going to be looking down the aisle at you to see what you're doing. He says you need to wear a suit and you need to wear a tie every day so you do not get those looks, and you gain respect that way. And that's one of the things that he did.
The world I grew up in, we would never have thought of things like that, but I understand what you're talking about, and you're absolutely right. And it's pretty sad that it's perceived that way. Yeah, I've worked a lot in the younger years. I mean, my kids are in college now, so they don't listen to anything I say at all. But in the younger years, I used to work with them on things like posture and projecting their voice. I remember when Justin was in 4th grade and he was competing in the countywide or the district-wide spelling bee. And we were, even as early as that, so he's 9 years old. I'm talking about how you project your voice, how you vary your pitch and your tone, how you speak in precise manner so that people will readily understand you. And I wound up doing that with Jeremy too. And it certainly has stuck with both of them. Now, the eye contact part, I haven't been so successful with that. I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
But the other parts, they're very clear speakers, and it all came from those lessons when they were in their single digits.
Yeah, that they're still, I mean, even at in their early 20s, they're still young. So the eye contact kind of maybe a little bit, that can be a little bit late developing.
To be fair, I was taught eye contact starting when I was about 4 years old. I grew up in a house where my father was the leader of one of the major political parties in the town, and very influential in the county and the state. And he used to host a lot of political figures at our house. So from the time I was 4 years old, they would send me to the door to open the door and greet people properly and look them in the eye, even though I was sort of looking, straight up, of course.
Right.
But I got a lot of that kind of lesson very early on, which I tried to do with my sons, but my sons had these things called, technology that distracted them from the lessons nearly as early as I had them. I didn't have such toys, but way back when. And I think this and the laptops and such and the video games
And
are
tablets.
the reason why there's a difference in the pace of learning and that sort of thing, and why there's a whole generation now and going forward that may redefine what it means to do things like eye contact and firm handshakes and things like that, and conversations of true length as opposed to snippets and sound bites. But if I keep talking like this, I'm going to sound like I'm 90 years old, which coincidentally I am. So
No, I was going to also add on that also culture's changing, I guess, like you were saying. And I think some of it is also lost, because one thing that we were just talking about, and it's nice every once in a while, if you get a thank you card, people don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just that used to be a common courtesy. Somebody gives you a gift or something, you have a birthday party, you send out a thank you card. You know, somebody does something nice for you, you send them a thank you, you know, and that's something that kids aren't really, I don't know if it's that they're not taught or it's not like part of normal etiquette anymore to like do things like that, you know. But
Yeah, and I
In
agree.
our house,
Even
in our house, my ex-wife was very good at giving my kids physical cards and envelopes and their instructions were to write the card. They always had to do that when they were young. Of course, it would take 2 or 3 months for them to finish the assignment before they sent it out, but they would definitely
Got
have to do it.
Yeah.
and I agree. It's important to do things like that. And I think even art of handwriting things, everything's sending there a text or a quick email. And, thinking back to things I've experienced or things friends have experienced, whenever you received a handwritten letter or handwritten thank you from somebody, it stands out, right? A thank you that's sincere. Thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed speaking to you about whatever it is much different when it's handwritten for whatever reason than if it's typed and sent in an email. And, it adds more of a personal touch, I think, to the whole deal, because then somebody's got to track down your address and all that as well. It means a lot.
Hey, Vince, you were the one who introduced us. You're pretty quiet.
Well, doing stuff around the house. So honeydew list Sunday. And anyway, and I didn't get the egg timer in yet. But I digress. No, you guys touch up on a number of things. Technology, text messaging, emails. Even here, like I'm actually, now that I'm being a little bit more aware of it. Yeah, I'm noticing more like getting used to talking to all of you guys as if you were actually here versus like, yeah, I'm just looking at a screen. How are you? Everything like that. But so even Zoom here, there's another type of etiquette. But even still, it also shows how you were brought up on how you act on Zoom. I was going to talk about dress, clothing, and everything like that. For many years, I was black trench coat, bullet belts, army fatigues, all that, whether it was work or whatever. I didn't really care, if my clothes had paint on them, if they didn't have paint on them, whether I was working or going to a barbecue, it was just whatever, so what would other people think, but as I grew older and I met more people and more people, pointed it out like, hey, you're here to get a job. You look like you just came out of, I don't know, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. All right. And I'll be like, well, so what? It's me, and they're like, hey, I don't, I'm not saying it's not you. You got it right. That's fine. But, you're going to be getting a job for us. You're going to be representing our company. All right. And you're not going to represent our company that way. And also our customers might not buy from us regardless of how good our product is, because they look at you and they're like, dude, this guy's going to kill me. What does he have underneath his coat? But learning over time, like, you're individual. Nobody's taking away your individuality, but you do need to be conscious of how you're carrying it, what you're wearing, how you're walking out. All of that, goes together as well as our communication, our speech rather. Emails, writing emails. I stink at writing emails, especially when it comes to business. All right. I'm learning that, in typing, with emails and everything, there's another form of etiquette. How, and the way the words are written is something else to learn. Not just writing like an essay or a paper in school. Going back to more in case, not about me, but about teaching my son Michael, is eye contact. All right, so he's a very animated talker like myself. All right, but he likes to get distracted. All right, and just like myself. So but watching him when he's getting distracted, I'm like, all right, Michael, you're losing me. You're losing me. Come back here. And so he's getting, more aware of like, all right, I'm talking about this, and I'm going to focus on, and then get that point across. Yeah, definitely how you carry yourself, how you sit, when you're sitting, it's like, yeah, okay, be comfortable, but yeah, the slouching thing. Yeah, I'm doing what my mom taught me. Yeah, you don't slouch down and everything. Sit up straight. Especially in church, or when we're out in out somebody else's, like, try not to be like, oh, I'm just gonna lean on this, I'm good. It's like, well, no, now you're kind of like, all right, I'm gonna take a nap here, type thing.
Right.
And then with his writing, a lot of times he if he wanted to be, he could be a great one of those jury courtroom dictators, because he likes to shorthand everything. The problem is then he forgets what he shorthanded, and he's like, uh-oh, now I gotta decode my writing here. So, getting him to really realize that written words are just
Right.
as important as spoken words and everything.
Stenographer was the word you were looking for, Vince. Word stenographer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
I actually did, and this is something that I would, especially for kids in their late teens, early 20s. I was in my very early 20s. I was like not even, but maybe 20, probably 20. A couple of weeks after Columbine happened, we're all familiar with the incidents and everything that was involved. You talk about the black trench coat. I have one. It was about 2 years old at that point. I actually still have it. I took my trench coat, and one Friday afternoon, I was out of class early, decided that I was going to go to New Brunswick and go, just go for a walk around, and decided, okay, I'm going to go through some of the elevators. It was quite interesting to see the reactions of people, not only walking down the street and walking in and out of buildings and things like that, but getting on elevators. I would stand on one side and they would literally be pushed up against the glass almost on the other to get away from me. At times, it was so bad I was going, do I stink? At one point, and then finally, after like the third or fourth time of this, turned around and said, hello, how are you today? No reaction. A couple of times it happened where it was no reaction. And then finally, slowly, people started to warm up a little bit. Then I went and put the trench coat in the car and just walked around in t-shirt and jeans. Completely different reactions. So it says a lot. That says a lot about carrying yourself, about the way you dress. My general synopsis was, at the time, it was that coat was, I guess, a symbol of fear. To this at this point, no, that eventually wore off. I mean, my wife wants to trash the thing every time I wear it. I get, looks and eye rolls from her. In fact, I'm still surprised that it's in the closet. I'm surprised she hasn't secretly thrown it away. But yeah, no, I can understand that. I can understand where you're coming from, Vince.
Yeah, I actually figured that out, and I use that sometimes to my advantage. So, if I'm depending on if I'm in a corporate situation or a business situation, I'll suit up, right, and look pretty good. But on the other hand, sometimes I go do work on rental properties, and what I do then is I put on my old, holy, painted on jeans with a ripped up T-shirt, and I'll show up at the front door and knock on the door and be like, oh yeah, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm, my name's Chad and I'm here to work on the place. Like, oh yeah, I'm like, yeah, I work for the owners, because I don't want them to know that I'm an owner, right? I just want them to think I'm some dude coming in to do a little bit of work. And it's just interesting, the whole thing, because I'm perceived a different way.
Right.
when I do that. But I don't want to, there's certain ways you can use that to your advantage. I think the way you dress either up or down to your advantage.
But it could be a disadvantage as well.
Yeah, it can be a disadvantage, but you can use it to your advantage. And probably some of the, I remember this one guy coming in. I never thought he had any money, and he had like the Kmart shoes with the straps and all that kind of stuff. Like didn't have shoelaces. Always wore, he's a real estate investor. And then he shows up one day at one of the real estate meetings for our local county. And he's like, okay, he says, I found this property. He says, I need 3 other people to put in $800,000 with me, and we can get this property for a steal. He says, and we'll each be able to use it, 1/4 time, and then we'll sell it in 2 years. And he had kind of the business plan, but I'm like, I never would have thought that guy would have had $800,000 in cash to put on a property because of the way he looked. My fault for thinking that, So, but it's interesting. But I think that's what he wanted to convey, is that he didn't have anything.
Right. Did you go in with him? Just out of curiosity?
I did not. Is it Lake of the Ozarks, the big house? I'm not interested in Lake of the Ozarks.
Okay.
And $800,000.
Right.
I thought you'd be interested in the money. Who cares about the house?
Yeah. Chad, you brought up too, like assumptions, and also you're almost talking to like playing spy too. So, you'll dress a certain way so you don't get noticed, or, people don't assume, hey, this guy has a Maserati, let me follow him home. It's like, no, this guy's probably living down by the river on government cheese, so don't worry about it. But also too, that you bring that back then too, from going from the speaker to the receiver part, where that not only we're aware of how we're presenting ourselves in the communication, but also then take it back from the other side. Then are we making too many assumptions on people, or are we actually saying good morning regardless of what they're wearing, how they're dressed? Clearly, yeah, all right, the cover of the book has an importance, and is speaking something on its own. But at the same time, we can't just assume, hey, this guy is wearing a trench coat, he's got a shotgun underneath, this guy is in holy jeans, he's a hippie, this guy's got one of these on, so he's going to be coming up and joining the Molly McGuire's over here down the block.
Or he's a hipster.
What's that?
Or he's a hipster.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah, they killed PBR. Yeah, you're right. Anyway, you go into assumptions then too. Where if we don't use our verbal communication skills, then we're just going around constantly judging the book by the cover, versus if we initiate the verbal contact, the verbal communication, then we actually get to read that book. We actually get to see that book, understand that book, and that book being that person, so it also ties into, we gotta keep in mind what our cover is saying, as well as the words that are coming out of it, but also not to just stop at the outside figure, at the physical cover, but still bring in that verbal communication, or not, you use at your discretion, but don't just stop a physical conversation because of the outside cover. So yeah, and it's always, I found it's always better to try and make that first contact. So you're opening up a door from somebody and you say good morning, you say how's it going, one of the most common things is living the dream. Hey, another day in paradise, good. All right, short talk. But that's usually also then when we both the person speaking and the person receiving and then back, it brings a little bit of a stress relief in a day, and how you brought that, so, but anyway, guys, my battery's on 2%, so I do have to go, and it's been great. God bless y'all. and I will see you next week. All right.
Okay. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, when I was a kid, well, not when I was a kid, but when I was probably like 16 or so, I remember picking up at Barnes and Noble a little booklet, and it was a booklet on etiquette, and it's like 25 things every man should know. And it was a great little handy book because it shows you everything from tying a tie to how to carve a turkey, you know, and different types of dress and when you dress appropriately for different things. And it was an important thing. And I think all kids should know, things like that we were saying, I know we already went through the tie thing, Jason. So
Carving a turkey, you mean you're not supposed to just grab the legs and rip the fucking thing apart?
yeah, I'm sure you're pretty well versed in that. But my learning of how to carve a turkey was from that book, and then later on it was Martha Stewart and how you carve a turkey so everybody gets a piece of the skin and reconstruct the turkey back onto the plate, for everyone with the presentation. Because I believe also with presentation, when you're eating, we first eat with our eyes and our noses before it ever hits our mouth. Because if it doesn't look good on the plate, people don't want to eat it.
Very good point, Doug. Yes.
And that's a great analogy to the human condition as well. If they don't look good, if somebody doesn't look good, you don't want to talk to them, right?
And that, so I do a lot of coaching in the business world with job applicants and interviewing skills and all that sort of thing. And they conservatively estimate that most hiring decisions are made in the first, I'm talking 80 to 90% of them are made in the first 30 seconds. And that's all. It has nothing to do with what people say. It's how they first present, how they first look, the handshake, the eye contact, whether or not they're dressed respectfully, how they stand, what their posture is, things like that. It sets the mood for whether or not the interviewer is going to be comfortable with that person. And if they screw that up, they could be the greatest candidate in the world. It's not going to matter.
Yep. It's the same thing actually for buying houses too. Typically, when people walk into a house, the decision is made whether they want to buy that house within like 30 seconds. Like from walking up to the house and walking into the door, within 30 seconds, they know if they want to buy the house or not, based on the things that they see just right there.
So you're saying that landscaping is important?
Landscaping is important, curb appeal, right? But then as soon as you get that curb appeal, then it's like the sights and smells and those kinds of things, and trying to present the house. Not that I've got a lot of experience with it, but trying to present the house so that the people looking at it can see themselves living there as well. But story related to job interviews. I was talking to a buddy who was hiring a guy, and he goes, this guy came in and he said, he's a real nice guy and everything, but he says, I noticed he had on these bright red socks with his suit. And he said, he said, talked to 3 or 4 of us. And he said, and everybody said, did you see that dude's bright red socks? And they said, that at the end of the interviews, they all kind of came together and made the decision. They're going to hire him. So they hired him and they pulled him into a room and we're telling him this stuff, telling him we want you to work with us. And they said, but can you tell us what's the deal with the socks? And he says, they're my lucky socks. And he said, everybody just kind of looks at each other and goes, okay.
Worked for us.
That was it.
Your luck worked.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember I've hired about, I don't know, probably like 10 to 12 people by now over the years. And I remember sitting there with my VP with interviewing somebody. And we went through all the normal questions and all. And I said, and what's your favorite ice cream? And the person was like, what? I was like, your favorite flavor of ice cream. Just as a breaker or whatever. And then I remember walking out of that. She's like, and don't ever pull shit like that again. She's like, what do you think? Asking something about their eye. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was fun.
It's not just fun. Depending on the reaction, that could be a verbal a cue that there are wrong answers to everything.
That's the reason that stupid questions like that are asked. It has nothing to do with the answer. It has to do with whether or not you're prepared. Can you think through something that doesn't sound ridiculously stupid? But what color is your favorite tree is one of my favorite ones. I mean, there's unbelievably stupid questions, and it's all about how will the person react.
Trying to trip them up.
Right. which I find to be a reprehensible way of interviewing. But
I agree. I think the best interviewers put people in extreme comfort so that they can see what that person's really like, as opposed to see them in a high stress situation. You know, that's been my experience anyways. I'd much rather have people come to talk to me and have them feel super at ease and just have a conversation. I can read their resume and I can ask them a couple questions. They can tell me a couple stories, but I'm going to know just like relaxed, how do they feel? Like, are they somebody I could see, you know, sitting down at lunch, talking to? Can I see myself sitting in a meeting with them or going on a business trip? Or what's, you know, kind of what's the ultimate decision with that?
life is all about appearance, and you know, I've tried to teach my boys that, but it's very frustrating because how do you look them in the eye and say it really doesn't matter what your substance is? If you look good, you're going to have an advantage. That's so frustrating. So, by the way, on the back end of that, so my younger son hasn't seen a haircut since August, and it's terrifying. But I say to him all the time, you can grow your hair to your feet. I don't care what you do in college. But once you start going for jobs, you know you're going to have to give it all up. I said it to both my kids. And both of them totally understand that. They totally get it. They don't care what they look like now, but they know they're going to have to settle in and conform to a certain extent and play the game to a certain extent when the time comes. Jeremy may have to do that this summer. Who knows? Maybe he goes and gets an internship. And so it's not just when you graduate college, it's, internships too. But for now, he's kind of Grizzly Adams, to a certain extent.
I tell you, Keith, I've had the same experience with Frank. I mean, he's got this beard and he's got this hair that in the morning he gets up, I'm like, it's crazy. I'm like, dude, you need a haircut. And I go, and you should trim your beard. I'm like, but I don't push it because now I'm like, he's himself, right? I'm like, he's a man now, and he needs to make his own decisions about these things, and he understands what he needs to do after, kind of as you had talked about with your boys as well. But I'm like, you need a haircut, dude. I'm like, and he's like, well, yeah, but I like my hair long. I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. But I'm like, there's going to be a time when having more styled hair and more of a kept beard is going to be important, or no facial hair at all, It's but he's, he'll learn it. And that, and some of that stuff, it's like teaching the kids this stuff about appearance, but at the same time giving them some latitude to be themselves.
Sure.
Because I want, there's certain things you have to do this, but here's where you can have some wiggle room,
Yeah,
we just the story I told about the fourth grade county or district-wide spelling bee. In the short time after that, for both of the boys, they got involved in school politics, where they would run for student council and they would run for the various offices and such, and they never won. But privately, the teachers would always say, if the students would vote based on presentation skills and content of messages, Justin and Jeremy would have swept to victory each and every time. But when you're in grade school or in high school, none of that matters. It's all about looks. And the only difference, so the only thing I did that and I just left it alone was it stays like that after high school. It's all about how you look, and It doesn't matter what you say. And we're seeing that playing out in across the country in politics too. They said that by far and away they had the best presentations, the best thought out ideas and all that, the best way of saying it, the most understandable speech and all that. But they weren't the popular kids.
Yeah. See, I've even seen that play out some of my life too, because my weight has fluctuated over time. And sometimes I'm a little husky, as my mom would say, and I'm perceived a different way than when I'm in good shape. And when I'm in good shape, I'm perceived a completely different way. Like, for whatever reason, it's kind of my 2 cents. And I think there's a psychological part on my part as well, as I'm seen as being a little more confident, a little more authority, speak a little more authoritatively, when I'm in shape than when I'm not. So, I mean, I know that stuff's true.
Yeah, I was gonna say with my boys, we're just going through with Colin. smells, and you take a shower, you put on underarm deodorant, and the whole thing is like, no matter what we could do, we have to ask him and make sure that he did it. Like, and we tried putting it in the bathroom, tried putting it in his drawer, tried putting it on his dresser, just like, hey, dude, you got to remember now, you're getting older. You have to do the underarm thing. For Brendan, we didn't have that problem, but we were also going to a wedding this year, and it brought up Brendan actually to come to me and ask me to show him how to tie a tie. So after we did it about 20 times, because the whole righty lefty thing, he's a righty, I'm a lefty, do it in a mirror, he finally got it so he could tie his own tie, and he actually has to wear a tie for school if he's going to wear a shirt. So a couple times a week he has to wear a tie. So now he knows how to tie his own tie and stuff. So both of those things were learning experiences, as well as I also got to show him how to shave. And I was like thinking, hey, this for me, it's like, you slash your face, you put your cream on, you take out your razor, And I remember my dad, had the straight razor, and I started with the straight razor as, like a kid and all. Because obviously I had to start shaving at a very young age, So
You don't say.
so it was like it was interesting, because the only thing I could think of, besides like, well, this is how I do it and this is where I start, and how you would do your neck and stuff, and try and so you don't cut yourself and this and that. I was like always thinking like Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, how Jay was like giving them tips about, you never want to cut across the grain when you're shaving and this and that. And I'm like thinking to myself, oh, that's all bullshit. Like, this is what you do.
Yeah. You basically, it comes down to doing it the way you're comfortable.
Yeah.
When it comes to shaving, that's the way I look at it. And you do what you're comfortable with, and you're not going to break that comfort just to stay within the lines, so to speak.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where I am with that. On top, like, we were talking about grooming and posture and stuff like that, and they're still a little shy, my boys. So we're always making sure that handshakes are a big thing. I think they got the eye contact thing okay, but making sure that they always give a nice handshake, when they meet people and all, and we still remind them. So
Yeah, I think anybody who has sons is going to go through that 5th grade through 8th or 9th grade window where deodorant and human do not go together, kind of thing.
Right.
And but then they start to get it, and girls start becoming a thing, and you hope that the girls have gotten it by then, because in the very beginning, let's just say neither of their girlfriends got it either, but they started to learn. I have to say that quietly, because Jeremy is within earshot of me, probably downstairs, but he is, I think, asleep, so I'm okay. Yeah, they all figured it out. So now that here they are early in college, and they're all doing, reasonably speaking, the things they're supposed to be doing. Now we got to work on things like cleaning the kitchen and cleaning the bedrooms, but one step at a time.
Yeah. Oh, the bedrooms.
Oh, Jason, you got years. Jason, you got years, baby.
Fucking disaster. Just a fucking disaster. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, but Jason, I tell you, the way to do it is to put into a big bag the things they really care about and hide it somewhere where they can't find it, and tell them you throw it all out. That will terrify them. And then when they get it back, they'll never do it again. That's the road to success. I mean, I think that is the parents of girls that I know tell me that. I even did that a little bit with Justin and Jeremy, but with Justin and Jeremy, they hardly ever spend any time in the rooms, and they literally sleep in the rooms, and that's it. The rest of the time they're somewhere in the house. So their rooms never got to be a big deal.
Right.
And of course they're boys, so they didn't have 1/10 the clothing that your girls do. So
Oh, sure. I'm sure. Okay. Anybody else have anything to add before we wrap this up?
No, but well, I was just gonna say that, yeah, your also your expressions and the way that you like when you're asked to do things and the way you act upon them, or when you're presenting yourself, it all really matters, and it's like one of those things for us, we're at that point too with the boys, is that I could ask you to do something and you could do it, you know with just go ahead and do it, or you could put on an attitude and drag your feet, and because I asked you to take your laundry basket up to your room, which is not the attitude we want. And my new thing is like, well, you walked past that laundry basket, why didn't you just pick it up and put it away? Or did you just walk past that and didn't pick it up? Like, you guys need to start thinking about like these things and helping around the house without having to be told. And when I do tell you, just do it. And there's no reason for us to tell you multiple times. So, you know,
We
that's
we have
all I
a thing
got.
here where the staircase between the main level and the second level. It took several years for them to understand that if there was something sitting on the staircase, it meant it was supposed to go upstairs. And to this day, they still don't really react to it. They'll walk right past stuff. There's certain, there's a position at the bottom of the staircase, and there's another position at the top of the staircase upstairs, where if there's something there, it means it's supposed to come downstairs. Yeah, maybe by the time they're 40, something like that.
Yeah, all we can hope, once they're our kids' age, is that they learn a little bit more every year, and that that eventually they're going to catch on to it. I've got a buddy, and his son's probably about 6 or 7 years ahead of Frankie, and he's like, yeah, he goes, just keep plugging along. He says they'll get there enough where they'll be independent, they'll be fine. He says you just got to keep plugging along, and they learn little by little.
They're so screwed.
I think that's a pretty good place to leave this for this week, as we butt up against an hour once again. I keep going, every week where'd the time go? But communication is, and having a firm grasp of it. Apparently, I don't have a firm grasp of the language at the moment.
And have you?
Nonverbal.
Here's some language for you.
He's very good at nonverbals.
Nonverbal, right there. Having a grasp of yourself, so to speak, as you maneuver through the early stages of your life, becomes imperative. And the more our children realize this, the more they'll learn to adjust, the more they'll learn to adapt. And the closer they will come to being the adults we hope they will become. So from all of us here at Dad's on Life, take care, everybody.
Be
Take care,
good.
Dad.
Have a
Ciao.
great week.